The envelope was still in my hand when my mother turned to me and said, "We think it's best if you just sign the waiver." I didn't say anything. I looked down at the attorney's letterhead, at my own name printed in black ink, Callie Marin Whitfield, and I thought, so this is what 31 years feels like. This is the weight of being the one they never worried about because they assumed I'd be fine. I was always fine. That was the problem. Growing up, I was the quiet one. My brother, I'll call him the way everyone else in our family did, the golden one, though his name was just Derek. Derek was the loud one. The one who filled every room he walked into. He played football in high school. Not particularly well, but he played. He was the one my father drove 2 hours to watch on Friday nights while I sat in the bleachers alone, doing homework on my knees. Telling myself I didn't mind. I didn't let myself mind. That was something I learned early. Derek needed things. He needed rides, money, patience, second chances. I learned not to need anything because the one time I did, when I was 16 and I asked my parents to help me pay for a summer art program at the community college, $60, that was all, my mother said, "Callie, you're so self-sufficient. You'll figure it out." And she wasn't wrong. I did figure it out. I babysat every weekend for 2 months. I figured out a lot of things on my own after that. By the time I was 22, I had a nursing degree from a state school I paid for mostly myself, student loans, 2 part-time jobs, 1 full scholarship I'd applied for without telling anyone in case I didn't get it. I moved to Portland, Oregon. I got an apartment the size of a walk-in closet, and I loved it because it was mine. I sent birthday cards home, called on Sundays, came back for Christmas. Derek, at 22, was in his 3rd year of a business degree my parents were paying for. He'd switched majors twice. He drove a truck my father co-signed on. He lived at home between semesters and left dishes in the sink. Nobody saw anything wrong with this. My grandfather, my dad's father, was the only one who ever made me feel like I was worth watching. He'd call me on random Tuesday evenings just to ask how my patients were doing. He was 78 years old, and he knew the names of my coworkers, my favorite coffee place in Portland, the fact that I'd been trying to learn to make my grandmother's biscuit recipe and kept burning the bottoms. His name was Harold. He called me Cal, which nobody else did. He said once, while we were sitting on his back porch watching the sun go down, "You know the difference between you and your brother, Cal? You never once asked me for anything." I always thought that was the saddest thing. I didn't know what to say to that. I laughed it off. I was good at laughing things off. He passed away 18 months ago. Heart failure, very fast, the way the good ones always seem to go. I flew back for the funeral, and I stood next to my mother at the gravesite, and she held Derek's arm the whole time, not mine. I stood there with my hands clasped in front of me. And I thought about the last phone call I'd had with Grandpa Harold, 3 weeks before he died. He'd told me he was proud of me. He said it plainly, no performance to it. "I am proud of you, Cal. I want you to know that." I told him I knew. I didn't really. But I'm glad I said it. The attorney's office was in a beige building downtown, the kind with too much air conditioning and bad landscape paintings in the hallway. My parents had asked me to come back for the reading of the will. My uncle, my dad's brother, was there too, sitting in the corner with his reading glasses already on. Derek came in 5 minutes late and immediately pulled out his phone. We sat around a conference table that was too large for the room. The attorney, a man in his early 60s named Mr. Forsyth, had one of those careful, neutral faces that give nothing away. He explained the basics, the house, the accounts, the personal property. Grandpa Harold's estate wasn't enormous by any standard, but it was his. A life of working 30 years at a paper mill and living carefully. The house would stay in a family trust. Fine. The personal accounts, my father and uncle would split them. Fine. Then Mr. Forsythe said, "There is a specific bequest for Derek Whitfield." My mother sat forward. It was a sum I won't name exactly, but it was significant. It was a check that would erase Derek's student loans entirely and then some. My mother made a small sound beside me, pleased and relieved in a way that embarrassed me to witness. Then Mr. Forsyth said, and for Callie Whitfield. My mother cleared her throat. Actually cleared her throat. Actually cleared her throat. Like a sound effect in a bad movie. Actually, she said, we wanted to speak with you about that. As a family, we discussed it, and we think it makes more sense for Callie's portion to go toward Derek's situation as well. He has more immediate needs, and Callie is so capable. She smiled at me when she said it, that same smile. You'll figure it out. I was so capable. Of course, my father nodded along. He didn't look at me. Derek was looking at his phone. I felt something happen in my chest. Not anger exactly, more like a door closing. Quietly, finally, for good. I said, I haven't agreed to that. My mother blinked. No one called me before today, I said. No one asked me. You made this decision without me and then brought me here to sign off on it? I heard my own voice and I didn't recognize how steady it was. I'm not signing anything today. Mr. Forsyth had not moved, had not changed expression. He folded his hands on the folder in front of him and said, That's entirely your right, Ms. Whitfield. And actually, before we proceed, there is something else. Everyone looked at him. Mr. Purslide. Whitfield, Harold, left a secondary document. He asked that it be read only if a dispute arose at this stage. He paused. I think this qualifies. My mother's smile dropped. The document was a letter, handwritten, notarized, dated 14 months ago, 2 months before Grandpa Harold's first hospitalization. Mr. Forsyth read it aloud. I will not pretend I remember every word, because I was crying before he was halfway through and I don't cry easily. But here is what I remember. Grandpa Harold wrote that he had watched his granddaughter Callie work her way through nursing school without complaint. That he knew she had asked her parents for $60 once at 16 for a class she wanted to take and been told she was self-sufficient. He wrote that he'd heard that story from my mother, who had told it proudly at Thanksgiving, like it was evidence of something good about her parenting. He wrote that it had bothered him ever since. He wrote that Callie had visited him 11 times in the last 3 years, that Derek had visited twice and both times had asked to borrow money. He wasn't bitter about Derek, he was clear about that. He wrote that Derek was not a bad person, just a person who had never been asked to carry anything. He had attached a codicil, a legal addition to the will, which directed that Callie's bequest could not be waived, redirected, or signed away without her free written consent obtained at least 30 days in advance of any legal proceeding, with independent legal counsel present. He had done this, the letter said, because he knew his son's family. He loved them and he knew them. He wrote at the end, Cal, you never needed rescuing, but everybody deserves to have someone in their corner anyway. Consider this me, being in yours. I'm proud of you. I want you to know that. I pressed my hand over my mouth. My mother sat completely still. My father had taken off his glasses and was looking at the table. Derek had put his phone away. Mr. Forsyth waited until I had composed myself and then said, Ms. Whitfield, you're entitled to independent counsel before signing any document here today. I'd encourage you to use it. I nodded. I could not speak yet. I did use it. I found an estate attorney in Portland through a colleague at the hospital, a woman in her 50s who reviewed everything in 2 days and called me back with a voice that said she'd seen this before. She told me the codicil was solid. She told me my grandfather had been very thorough. She said, someone looked out for you, and I had to put her on hold for a minute. I took the bequest. I want to be honest about that. I thought about refusing it on principle, and my therapist talked me out of it. She said, refusing the money won't make your mother see you differently. It will just mean you refused the money. She was right. She usually is. I paid off the last of my student loans. I put the rest into a high-yield savings account and then, after some months, I did something I hadn't planned on. I established a small scholarship fund at the community college in my hometown for nursing and healthcare students with demonstrated financial need. I named it after my grandfather, Harold Whitfield Memorial Fund. The application goes live every fall. The first year, we were able to award 3 students. I attended the small ceremony over video call in my scrubs during my lunch break. One of the recipients was a 20-year-old from a town 40 minutes away. She reminded me of myself so much it was almost unbearable. I sent her a card afterward. I told her she was going to do fine. The part of this story I didn't expect was my brother. Derek called me 2 months after the will reading. I almost didn't answer. We hadn't spoken since that conference room, since I'd sat there crying over our grandfather's handwriting while he quietly put his phone in his pocket. I almost sent it to voicemail, but something made me pick up. He didn't give me a speech. That's the thing. I'd expected a speech, maybe an apology that was mostly about him. The kind where you can hear the person waiting to be forgiven so they can feel better. He didn't do that. He said, "I think I've been a bad brother. I don't know when it started. I don't know how to fix it, but I wanted to say it." I didn't tell him it was okay. It wasn't entirely. I told him I'd heard him. I told him I'd think about it. What I actually thought about for weeks after was the line in our grandfather's letter. Derek is not a bad person, just a person who has never been asked to carry anything. I had been angry at Derek for so long that I'd never considered the weight of being raised the way he was raised, to be loved conditionally, contingent on being the favorite, contingent on being the one who needed rescuing. What happens to a person when the pedestal gives out, when no one ever asks them to be accountable to anything? I don't excuse it, but I started to understand it differently. Derek and I talk occasionally now. It's cautious and new, like walking on ice neither of us fully trusts. But we talk. He got a job last spring, his first real one, with actual stakes. He texted me when he got it. I texted back, "Proud of you." And I meant it. My relationship with my parents is harder to describe. My mother called me 3 weeks after the reading. She didn't apologize, not in the first call, not in the way I needed. She said she hadn't realized I'd feel hurt. She said she thought I was strong enough to handle it. She used that word, strong, like it was a compliment she'd been giving me my whole life, when actually it had been a door she'd used to keep me out. I told her that. I said, strong isn't a reason to leave someone out. It's not a permission slip. There was a long silence. Then she said quietly, "I didn't know you felt that way." I said, "You didn't ask." We're not fixed. I want to be honest about that too, because I've watched too many of these stories wrap up with forgiveness that came too easy, and it never rang true to me. My parents and I are in the middle of something. The slow, uncomfortable work of being honest with each other for possibly the first time. My mother came to Portland in February. We had dinner. It was awkward and also, by the end, real in a way our holidays had never been. My father is still learning how to look at me. But he's learning. I am 31 years old. I work 4 12-hour shifts a week in a pediatric unit, and I come home to an apartment that is larger than my first one, but still mine. Entirely mine. I have a dog named Biscuit. Yes, named after the recipe I kept burning. Yes, I eventually got it right. I have a best friend I've known since nursing school, who knows every version of this story, and who showed up at my door with wine the night I got home from the will reading, before I'd even called her. I have a scholarship fund, named after a man who believed in me when it cost him nothing, and also when it cost him something. I have my grandfather's last words to me, committed to memory. "You never needed rescuing." But everybody deserves to have someone in their corner anyway. I carry that. I carry it into the pediatric unit when I'm working with a kid who's scared and whose parents aren't there. I carry it when I'm writing recommendation letters for nursing students. I carry it when I write the annual letter to Harold Whitfield Memorial Fund recipients, which always ends the same way. The way I wish someone had told me a long time ago, "You are already enough. You don't have to earn the room. Just stay in it." I am still learning that myself, but I'm learning. I've thought a lot about what it means to be called strong your whole life and whether that was ever really a compliment. My mother said it to me at 16 when she turned down $60. She said it to me in that conference room when she smiled and told the attorney I'd be fine. She's been saying it my entire life, and for most of that life I accepted it as something good about me. Now I think it was something convenient about me. I was strong, so I didn't require anything. I was capable, so no one had to show up. The word was never really about me. It was about what I cost them, which was nothing, and how easy that made everything. What I've come to understand, slowly, the way you understand things that hurt, is that every family has its own economy. There are people who are invested in, and people who are expected to generate returns on their own. I was the second kind. Derek was the first. Neither of us chose that. And the cost of it didn't only fall on me. It fell on him too, in ways I couldn't see until much later, because you can't build character in a person you never asked to carry anything. My parents loved Derek in a way that made him fragile. They managed me in a way that made me lonely. Neither of those things was love done right. Grandpa Harold saw it. He saw it for years, and he did the one thing he could. He made sure that when it mattered, I had someone in my corner. Not to rescue me. He knew I didn't need rescuing, but to witness me, to put his name, literally his signature, on the fact that he had watched and he had seen and he had decided I was worth protecting. That is what I carry now. Not the money. Though the money was real and it helped, and I won't pretend otherwise. What I carry is the knowledge that one person paying close attention can rewrite what someone believes about themselves. Grandpa Harold called me Cal and asked about my patience and remembered that I burned the bottoms of biscuits. He asked, "That's the whole thing, really?" He asked. The cause and the effect of this story are not complicated once you step back far enough to see them. A girl was taught to need nothing, and she learned to need nothing, and that looked like strength for 30 years, until it looked like what it actually was, a family that had failed to show up and dressed the failure in a compliment. And a man who saw that clearly chose to act, not with anger, not with punishment, with a letter, a legal document, a scholarship fund he set in motion before he died. What I want to say to anyone who recognizes something of themselves in this, the one who was always fine, always capable, always the one who figured it out, is that your self-sufficiency is real, and it is yours, and you built it, and it matters. But it was never supposed to be the reason people left you alone. Those are two different things. You were never meant to earn your place in a room by being the least amount of trouble. I'm still working on believing that. But I'm working on it, and I named a scholarship fund after the man who believed it first. That feels like the right place to start.